Great. I want you to look at the first component in terms of this Olson's integrated model. We want to look at the assessment part. Before you can do any kind of treatment, or before you endeavor to do any kind of treatment, you must do an assessment to find out just what is really going on here. The unfortunate thing about it is that we have persons, including myself at times, who have a tendency to jump into the fray to do the treatment without really doing an assessment, and not understanding many times we do more damage than help the persons as such. Many times you don't get the feedback in terms of the damage you've done because the persons might not show up anymore. So we have to really make certain that before you do any kind of treatment, you need to do an assessment. Check out the situation. Listen very carefully to the pain or what the person happens to be telling you, and then go from there. You have to find yourself in a process of coming out of yourself and allowing the Holy Spirit of God to, that's supposed to be indwelling in you anyway, to really come and just be that, to guide and to instruct you in the terms of really dealing with persons who might be having some difficulties. One of the situations that recently happened is that some persons dropped by and they're planning on marrying, and I told them that this is not an official counseling session. This is just a consultation that you requested. So in the process of the person who was a leader, one of the church leaders, bringing the fiancé in and introducing me to the fiancé, the process of their sitting in the office and the gentleman speaking, I looked at the fiancé and I was very bothered from the nonverbal part, and the Spirit of God, in all honesty, touched my heart in terms of what might be going on with this young lady. And as the gentleman was talking, I listened, and he was talking as some men do, I must say, from a more objective, non-personal sort of way, you know. And there are persons, especially pastors or ministers or deacons, what it might be, can really put forward a nice facade, show, and most people are fooled by it, but not the Holy Spirit, not the Holy Spirit. And so as he was talking, I allowed him to make his statements, to talk what it might be, and then I asked the young lady some things, and she would put in short, she'd answer very shortly what it might be. And I told her, I said, I cannot help but to let you know that what I'm feeling from you is an intense amount of sadness that you're feeling. You're hurting so badly, and I can see it and I can feel it. And that's when she started to cry. Tears started coming from her eyes. You close the door for her. Tears started coming from her eyes. And of course, I looked over to my box of Kleenexes, and it appeared to be empty. And I said, Lord, I know that I haven't done this again. I know, Lord, that you have a backup for me. And the interesting thing about it is that she reached into the box and she pulled out the tissue. And I said, thank you, God. But the intensity of what she was feeling started to coming out verbally. She started talking and telling me. And the gentleman was just looking. He was looking. He was being surface. He was being just superficial. But she was coming out with real stuff that had to do with that relationship. And she said that if I had to make a decision to marry you the way you acted yesterday, I would tell Dr. Gibson, no, I would not want to marry you. But the way you are behaving today, I am reconsidering. And how she came out and how she verbalized what it might be, this lady really, it was so intense, it was so strong that I really knew that the Spirit of God is the one that's going to have to guide and lead me, and listening and understanding and elucidating, making clear in my mind, which it did, what she was actually saying. And the thing that was so interesting here is that this lady had such a high level of intelligent functioning that I would not dare for anyone who was a novice, a naive, or one who did not have, even if you were strong in the Lord and you did not have that kind of level of functioning, you would not have been able to really deal with this lady's intelligence, let alone her spiritual hurt as such. And I really thought about that. I thought about this. Let's not assume things here. Let's first of all get an assessment. And I was assessing, assessing, listening to her, and she confronted. And it was interesting. The only thing that happened is that the young lady, I said, well, yes, that would be from what I've heard from you, heard from your fiance. You would have to have a certain person to really work with the both of you in terms of premarital counseling. But I would also recommend that each one of you are going to have someone to work with you. You need to have someone to work with you in terms of individual counseling. You're going to need, each one of you need to have so many sessions of individual counseling to work through some unresolved things that are going on within you as such. Now, they always come up with the question, well, who can that be? I said, at this period of time, I don't know of anyone that I can recommend to you, and I didn't. I did not. Because it had to be someone matured, spiritually strong, and could really deal with this lady's level of thinking. And of course, as I was trying to wiggle myself out of the deal, because I knew that she was looking at me, and she was asking, well, why can't you counsel us together? I said, well, let me think about it. Okay. Let me think about it. When I say let me think about it, that means I need to pray about it. I need to pray about it. because, in all honesty, I was not really in preparing to do that as such, but I told him I need to pray about it. But an assessment needs to be made first. And in this integrative approach to family therapy, it proposes a straightforward and systematic approach to assessment. Rather than view the couple or family's problem through the lens of a single treatment modality, you have to be very careful with that. A single treatment modality, one moves through a series of steps in order to arrive at an adequate assessment of the problem. And that is what you want to keep in mind. One moves through a series of steps in order to arrive at an adequate assessment of the problem. I'm not saying an adequate treatment of the problem. I'm saying an adequate assessment of the problem. Now, you're going to find a lot of this I'm talking about right in your book, okay? Right in your book, he talks about it, okay? And I want you to really see what I emphasize or hear what I emphasize, because when you start looking at cases as such, and you hear your fellow man talking about treatment prior to talking about assessment, then you must say, no, let's back up here. We need to look at this, first of all, in terms of assessment. Then we'll look in terms of it in terms of treatment planning. Okay? Because if I were to get your input from you in terms of how would you deal with this case, and you start talking about treatment part, then you did not really get the concept here. So I'm emphasizing assessment of the problem. And so going through a series of steps allows for the unfolding of the problem. Ideally without imposing a counselor's frame upon the couple, and that is what you have to really be aware of. In terms of ideally not imposing your own way of seeing things, your own frame of reference, your own worldview upon the couple. Okay? Your own judgmental biases upon the couple. And it begins with the simplest and most obvious level, that of problem solving. And so one thing I want always to hear when I ask about the integrated model, Olson's integrated family therapy model, I want to hear from you where you all would say that you always start at the simplest level, and that is the problem-solving level. And then you move sequentially through other stages. At the problem-solving level, that's where you always start. Now, that is in concrete there. Now, after you start the problem-solving level, then you want to understand that you will have flexibility in terms of other levels that you're dealing with. And then one thing you want to keep in mind is that at each level, assessment at each level, either you come to either resolution of the problem or to an assessment at another level. When you come at the problem-solving level, you're going to eventually find out that we're going to go from there maybe to the interactional level. If that problem cannot be resolved at the problem-solving level, where you're looking at problem-solving skills and it's something that can be resolved, then you'll find in doing that, working with trying to resolve at problem-solving level, some other issues start coming up. And these other issues that are coming up would be a warning, a red flag to you that you've got to move to another level of assessment. And that other level of assessment after the problem-solving level of assessment, keep in mind, would probably be the interactional level. And that would deal, keep in mind, with communication, how this couple communicates, and it's going to look at meta-communicate. You need to teach them something about how to communicate about communicating. And we'll get to that level. A problem-solving level can be easily taken care of, and I'll probably get to that in my talk on it, in the sense of it might be that you might have a couple whose kid is having a problem in school, and one of the issues that come about is that comes out at the problem-solving level is that, well, you're assessing and with the couple and talking with a young person that's creating problems in school, because months before that never happened. That did not happen. But now he's beginning to act out in school. It might be, and it might be that the acting out is due to the fact that dad does not spend enough time with the son. He's always busy or doing something, but he never spends any time with me, the son. Mom has to do everything. Mom has to do this, what it might be, but dad is always promising but never spending the time with me. And so therefore, out of frustration with dad, this young man finds himself acting up in school. Okay. Now, one of the counselor in the school is observing that, well, this young man is acting up here in school here and creating some problems that he has not done before. I'm going to request that the parent and the young man see this therapist. Evidently, that counselor is very wise to do that. But the parents might get very defensive and say, now, why is it that we got to see the therapist? Because we're not the one with the problem. But when you're dealing with, in terms of a systemic point of view, when you're dealing with a way of looking at a family as a unit, you're saying that, hey, when one person in that family is hurting, the whole family is hurting. The whole family is hurting. So there's not this young man that's got a problem by himself. No, the whole family is hurting here. And it's going to take the family system working with this young man, so not only will he stop hurting, but they stop hurting. But if they have good problem-solving skills, understanding that this is what needs to be done, and the dad says, okay, I understand, this is what I need to do, and he starts spending some time with the son, about the fifth session, what it might be, you're having more reports in terms of the young man acting out in school, he's doing fine, then what has happened? You have really resolved the problem at the problem-solving level. You don't need to go any further. You don't need to go any further. But it's not that simple. I wish it were. Let me say my cases were not that simple. Okay. was not that simple. I've had to roll in my sleeve with the guidance of the Holy Spirit and the Word of God and say, oh, we got to go a little bit deeper. Some other things are popping up here, that need to be really looked at. But again, assessment at each level leads either to resolution of the problem or to assessment at another level. Now, with an introduction from counsel, the counselor needs to get a handle on what is going on between the couple and attempt to form at least a preliminary assessment and a working hypothesis. A preliminary assessment and at least a working hypothesis. When after listening, hearing, even with this couple that is planning on marrying came to me, my feelings is that, why did you come? Well, we need some help here in terms of some things that need to be cleared up here. There are some issues that we need to take a look at here before we even think about, marriage. Matter of fact, we've decided we'll put it off for a little bit longer before we really do it. And so, therefore, that's why we're here in terms of that. And, of course, in order to get a better handle on things, I asked them to kind of talk to me a little bit. In the process of their talking and being aware of this lady's hurt, and of course, eventually bringing that to the out, and, of course, her response to it instead of crying and was saying, you know, you got it, you hit it, I am hurting, I'm in pain, and she explained why she was in pain. My deal is saying, okay, now, there's something happening here. my little working hypothesis is that the person's here, in all honesty, and I don't bring it out, you know, there is somebody is not being honest with somebody. Somebody is not really being not honest with that other person, but they're not even being true to the God they say they serve. I don't know who it is, okay? But again, that was one of the things that was started coming about in terms of the working hypothesis, that even with that encounter that lasted 3 hours, and my wife was calling and said, now wait, what's happening there? I said, well, I get to hear later on. Of course, they were looking at me and said, well, I don't want to be in your shoes when you have to go home, you know. But I said, but this is very important, you know. This session ended up lasting 3 hours. 3 hours in terms of stuff. But I did start to making a preliminary assessment and a working hypothesis. And some of the basic assessment questions asked in the first interview always having to be, why now? Olson always gave a good example in terms of that, in terms of a couple that came to counsel for some help. Why now? A couple, of course, have been having a conflict for at least 5 or 6 years, you know, but why now? You know, what is the problem that has brought them for counseling? And of course, you know, the situation that Olson looked at is that, well, it came now because the other day we had a big fight. We had a big argument. And it just so happened that in the argument, the wife was afraid that the husband, in the argument, the husband had threatened to move out. And of course, that made the wife very much afraid that he, of course, threatened to move out. Well, my possibility that he might divorce her. And so, of course, that's very scary. Why? And so much. And the thing that compounded the thing is that, hey, you know, he had already had a friend who had already divorced his wife, and that did not make it any better. And so, therefore, hey, we need to go in and get some counseling here. Okay? Why did they choose this counseling center? Why did they choose you? You know. Of course, they chose probably that place because upon a recommendation upon someone, but my deal, I always ask the question, how come you chose to come to me? And many times the persons have talked to someone who had been in counseling with me, who have referred them to me, those persons who chose to come to me. And then how long has the problem been occurring? How long has the problem been going on here? You know, this situation might have been about 5 or 6 years for this couple. When did it start occurring and so forth and so on? Well, you know, several years ago, what it might be. But the thing that you want to look at is what are the strengths in the marriage of family. You want to start to focusing on, the first thing you want to really start to focusing on, not the problem per se, you're listening very much so, but you want to look, what are the strengths? You're looking at what are the strengths here. My deal is that I always tell persons, when you have couples that are coming to you, definitely there's a reason, and then in the process of their talking with you, what it might be, they'll let you know. There could be a lot of anger going on there, a lot of sadness going on, what it might be. But the thing about it, and there might be a lot of blaming going on. He did this to me, or she did this to me, and so forth and so on. I had one couple, both of them were leaders in the church, and he was saying, well, for goodness sakes, she is always listening to what the pastor tells her to do, and she won't listen to what I tell her to do. And she said, yeah, I sure am. I sure do listen to what my pastor tells me to do, and I don't listen to what you do. And yes, I do. And he said, well, your pastor don't even like me anyway. He said, no. And he said, you're the one. She said, but you're the one that needs counseling. And he said, no. I think that you're the one that needs the counseling, not me. She said, no, I don't need the counseling because I made up my mind what I'm going to do. And I said, what is that? And she said, I'm going to divorce you. But there was a lot of blaming and going on what might be. But many times when that started happening, I was asked the persons, I said, well, help me out here a little bit. I know that there is a period in time that when the two of you did have an okay relationship. Now, I want to ask you to work with me here. I would ask the husband. In one situation, I asked the wife. I asked the husband because the wife was really hurt in terms of in the session there. She was showing the hurt what it might be. I asked the husband. I said, what is it when you first saw your wife? What is it that really attracted you to her? And he said that when I first saw her, I thought that she was the most beautiful woman in the world. And he went on to explain what he meant by seeing her as being the most beautiful woman in the world. When he made that statement, I saw her countenance change from one of anger or what it might be to one of relaxation. And I asked her, I said, when you first saw your husband for the first time, what is it about him that really you really liked, that was very that made you attracted to him, saying that he's the man? And she said that when I saw him, the first thing I liked about him was that he was a good singer. And I said, oh, for goodness sakes, because when I looked at him, he didn't look like he could sing at all. But that's deceiving. He was a good singer. He was singing in there, it might be. And secondly, he was a good-looking man. I said, oh, great, okay. And then when I started reflecting on their first encounters as such, they started looking at the strengths of one another more so than the blaming what it might be. So I got them out of that blaming mode. As a matter of fact, I had one student that many years ago, when he first came into my classroom, and I looked at him, and he said, well, I'm a businessman, but I left all the money that I was making, and I'm following the call of God, who wants me to come here to this seminary to get some knowledge and wisdom so that God can use me in whatever way He wants to use me. And he said that I was also an officer in the military, and just gave me some information about him. When I first saw him come into my class, I said, I already know, I already have a feel of what God wants you to do. And he looked at me as if I was crazy. Of course, that was nothing new. That is always happening, so that's a routine for the last many years. And I said that God has called you the pastor of church. And he looked at me definitely as if I was out of my mind. But he stayed with me. He stayed with me in terms of the counseling classes, and he was one of the top students in our class, my classes, especially my classes. And he a gentle giant. And he, prior to getting his Master of Divinity, he was called to pastor a church. prior to even finishing up. He was just getting ready to graduate, you know, and he was called to a certain place for an interview, you know, and they chose him as the pastor, you know, and he definitely was kind of came to recognize what I saw in him in terms of God's call and how God wanted to use him in terms of ministering to people. He wrote me and told me, he said, I remember what you told me in one of the classes, Introduction to Marriage and Family Counseling. I remembered what you told me, and I utilized that when I had to deal with a couple in conflict. And when I started asking the couple about what attracted them to one another, each other when they first met, it was amazing as to how all the hostility and many other things just kind of died down. And I was able to work with them. And he said that I really want to thank you for that. So I had a student that really said, well, I don't know about it, but let me see what Dr. Gibson got anything worthwhile saying here. You know, and he tried it out, you know. But it does work, because I have utilized it many times when couples have come in a combative mode, and it does work. And so therefore you are looking in terms of the strengths of the family or the marriage. And still in the process, you are still forming certain sort of preliminary assessment. Now, in your book, you're going to be shown by Olson a certain kind of grid, a little pattern, a map that he has that you can go through in terms of following it. And it's good to study that also, because it kind of lays out things. But we look at the problem-solving assessment part first. Again, we start, I emphasize, assessment begins with the problem-solving, which is the simplest level. The counselor must first identify the problem that has brought the couple or family in for counseling. Now, be careful with this one. The thing about it is that you want to work as such with the persons of the couple that they will identify to you, you know, what they perceive as the problem as such, and come to an agreement in terms of this is what we would like to work on. Want to be very careful with that one. Don't you try to do it. You form your hypothesis, yes, but let them work through with you in terms of what they see happening to the problem, and the problem or problems with the problems they need to work on. And so that's what you need to really do. This may not, it is not as easy as it sounds. No, many couples describe rather vaguely what has brought them in for counseling. Simply stating that they need better communication skill or need to feel closer does not provide the counselor with much information. So just don't let it stop right there. You know, as the statement Olson states, the counselor must work hard to help the couple or family state in concrete terms what has brought them to counseling, and to help them set goals that they both agree with address the problem that caused them to come to counseling in the first place. And so therefore, when the person is saying that we're having a communication problem, or we need to feel close to one another, tell them that yes, I'm hearing what you're saying, but you need to help me out here. Okay, and one way that you can help me out to better understand when you say you're having a communication problem is give me an example. Okay. And many times they will give you an example in terms of what might be they term as a communication problem. Now, as you reflect on your own relationships as such, think about how you communicate when you might be in a disagreeable sort of situation with your spouse, especially. Think about how you communicate. Most people don't think about that, but think about how you communicate. I know I always reflect, and I learn a lot from persons. I learn a lot in terms of guidance of God. I said, yeah, you can be angry, but don't let the sun go down in anger. But don't, okay, you need to resolve some things before you even go to sleep. But think about how you might communicate when you find yourself in a disagreeable mood, or what it might be with your spouse, or your spouse, how your spouse might communicate when they're in a disagreeable mood with you. I know there are some couples who have said that, when my husband has left, and I use this example all the time, when my husband left the room, every time I want to talk with him about something serious, he leaves the room and starts going upstairs. And when that happens, that burns me up. He just leaves the room, he's leaving the room and goes upstairs, and he just keeps going. And here I'm trying to talk to him about some serious things. And I tell you, that just gets on my nerves. And I tell, well, the husband, I said, well, your wife is telling me some things here in terms of communication. Help me to understand about this communication problem. And he said, well, the thing that happened is that when I could be in the room, I don't know how long with my wife, and she will sit there and talk about everything under the sun. But when I get ready to go upstairs, she'll start talking about some serious things. And so therefore, I just keep on going up the stairs and ignore her. And the result is that both of us end up not speaking to one another for 2 weeks. For 2 weeks. And of course, it's something that they have been doing over the years in terms of that. Until it, of course, comes to a head where they have a big argument, blow out, and boom, somebody threatened divorce, and so, hey, we got to go, better go and get some counseling here. And so, therefore, my feelings is that, okay, you got something to work with here in terms of that couple that just told you what their communication, one of their communication problems as such. You got here something in concrete terms they've just told you. And so, therefore, now, what you going to do with it? What you going to do with it? In terms of that. Now, that's going to go to the deal, but the thing that I ended up doing with this couple here in the process is just simply stating, this is what I would like for you to do. Would you mind doing this for me, at least trying this for me? Again, pay attention to how you address the people. You have two matured adults in the room with you as a counselor. You have a situation where you have to be aware of the fact that the male, in terms of you're being a male, there was a male that's in the counseling session with his wife, you have to watch the dynamics there. You have to watch the dynamics in terms of not only the way you deal with that male, to not make that male feel less than a man or less what it might be, or humiliated, but you have to also be aware of the dynamics of the female, the wife. So it won't turn into a male thing in terms of the wife, or the male put down in front of the wife. Female likewise. It doesn't turn into, if you as a female counselor, that doesn't end up being a male bashing sort of thing. You're a Christian, so a male bashing sort of thing, where the husband is feeling like nothing with the female, or you're aligned with the man as such and so forth. So all these dynamics, you have to really be aware of in the process of making certain sort of suggestions. But I asked them, I said, would you mind doing this for me? I said, the wife first, I said, would you mind? When your husband is in the room with you, I would like for you to really, at that time, whatever serious issues you need to talk about, talk with him at that time. And the husband, I really want you to really, would you mind sitting there and listening to your wife? talk to you about the serious issues. Okay? Now, if by chance the old habits come back, where your wife might start to talking about your husband is getting up to leave, and you start talking about some serious things as he's going up the stairs. If that starts happening, I ask the husband, would you mind just stopping and coming back down the stairs, coming back into the room with your wife, and listening to her? So would you mind trying that, please? And so therefore, they agreed to that. The only way, one of the reasons that I had to really, and we'll look at this, is that if we can't get the husband out of this dance in terms of communication, if we can't get him out of the dance, we're going to find ourselves focusing on the dance and not really focusing on what the real problem is. Okay. And when you hear a couple tell you that, well, look like we're going through the same thing over and over again that we've done last week, we're now look like we're going through the same thing. Well, when you hear that, that's a warning to you that you need to check out your strategy. You need to check out what you're doing here. But if a couple is in a dance and you're just working on the dance, you're going to find yourself going through this thing over and over again without anybody making any kind of progress. So you got to work at getting them out of that dance, which we'll look at later on as we look at the integrated model. Now, framing the problem in a way the couples of family can accept is essential. Couple need to accept the definition of the problem that is non-blaming and non-judgmental. That is non-blaming and non-judgmental. And so therefore, you really have to look at it this way. When you find two people who are very much right at it, going at it. Now, one of the situations where the couple came in and they were really very polite. Very polite. There was no blaming going on. There was no arguing going on. And they spoke very well, and really, was really doing very fine at the first session. And I said to myself, this is unusual. Maybe I've come upon something here that's pretty good here. Maybe this might be something that God has given me a break from all the stuff that I generally come in with, And so something inside me saying, yeah, Jim. However, the next session, no sooner than I opened that door, didn't have time for prayer. Yes. That door opened, they came in, and they were going after one another. I mean, verbally, they were at it, And I wanted to, you know how it is sometimes you see people just going at it and going at what it might be, and you just want to do something, you want to do something, and the Spirit of God said, you just stay. Just don't. Which I did not do a thing. They sat down, it was still going. And the blaming, all this stuff was going at one another. You're this, it might be. And so therefore, I let the deal run its course. And then I was saying that it seems as though, from what I've heard from you, is that one of the problems that's happening here, as you had mentioned, the wife had mentioned, is that it's the teenage son, the father's biological son, that only been married 2 years. She's never been married. This is her first marriage. He had a 15-year-old son that's in the home. And what I'm hearing is that you, as the wife, is feeling that the son shows you no respect whatsoever and really talks very disrespectful way to you, and so forth and so on. And this is what you have identified as the problem. And as the husband, do you see this as being, and he kind of validated that in terms of, yes, that's what the son is doing and does, and so forth and so on. But I didn't want to get pretty judgmental in terms of what they were doing in terms of that. And again, I had to emphasize again, is that my feelings is that both of you are hurting. And also your son is hurting. And again, I had to emphasize that when one is hurting, the whole family is hurting. It takes you out of that mode of whether you're conscious of or not of being judgmental or blaming. And I did request them, I did request, and it was very important, that they would bring the 15-year-old son to the next counseling session, which they decided to do. But I didn't want to be judgmental toward either one of them. So you want to frame it in a way. And when you're doing family counseling, when you're doing couple counseling, you have to learn how to frame your words in a certain way that persons won't feel as if you are judging them. One might, so they won't feel that you are having an alliance with this other one against me. That they won't feel that you are blaming me and not that other person. So the framing of the situation, of situations as they present, is very important. Very important. I've heard persons tell me that I never go back to my pastor again because the first thing he did is start judging me. I went to talk to him about my husband's adultery, and before I know it, he started pulling out the Bible and reading scripture to me. I just got up and left. I'm not going back. One pastor, one minister, he wasn't a minister, a young man, said, yes, me and my wife were having a problem with our pastor, and the thing that I perceived that was going on is that he was trying to hit on my wife, more so than anything else. One deacon told me, well, I never go and talk to my pastor about marital problems because things that are always happening, I'm always in the wrong. So therefore, I'm not going to talk to him anymore. Not at all, And so therefore, one of the things that you have to have heads up is how you frame what is being presented in that counseling session. Frame it in such a way that person don't feel as if you are ignoring them or putting them on the spot or blaming them or being judgmental toward them. And so therefore, that's something, it's a technique that you have to work on. And one of the techniques I just gave you in terms of dealing with couples and even families is that what? When one is hurting, everybody hurts. And I would like to work with you as a family, what it might be, so that you will not be hurting. That's one way. It's one way. But after preliminary definition of the problem, the couple accepts, the counselor must assess the couple's problem-solving skills. We're at the problem-solving level here. At the problem-solving level. This assessment involves how the couple solves or attempts to solve problems together, and whether their impact with the problem, and whether their impact with the problem that they brought to the first session is abnormal. I don't like the word abnormal. I don't like that. It's something that is not really working for the good of the relationship. And you need to assess in terms of, are they usually good at problem solving? Is the presenting problem simply an unusual one? Or does the couple have several toxic or repetitive problems in their relationship that their problem solving skills do not seem to affect? Now, I always have persons in the process of dialoguing and talking with them present ways of, get the input in terms of how they might communicate and working out or working through or looking at a problem. And I do that because I need to get an idea of how they might, in spite of the fact that they are, not happy with one another, how they have gone about trying to really resolve it. One situation where I was working with this couple, and of course I might have told you about this, where I was asking the gentleman in terms of how would you work with this situation here that your wife-to-be really is saying that you are going and pulling money out of the bank without letting her know. And she's the one that is making the money, and her salary, everything is automatically put into the bank. You have seasonal work, but the money you make, you keep. So she's having a problem here, she's saying, with you're taking money out of the bank without telling her. And then she's having a problem in terms of saying the money you do make, when you do make some money, that you keep it. What way do you think that you can kind of work here in terms of making certain that everything is okay with your wife-to-be without any conflict? He said, first of all, I don't feel that that's my bank account anyway. Well, that didn't start out too well there. I said, well, would you mind sharing with me why you don't feel that this is your bank account anyway? I said, it seems as though you can sign off on it and everything else. I used the example before. He said, because my name is not first. I said, oh, okay. And she looked at it. She said, your name is not first. She said, you can write? No. But my name is not first. Okay. Secondly, instead of his kind of talking with his wife in terms of how we can kind of work this through, he was just saying, I don't feel that I need to tell you anything in terms of what I take out of the bank. No, I don't think I need to tell you that. Why? Because I'm the man. Well, I said, well, we're not doing too well here in terms of problem-solving skills. And he's not working with. Work with me a little bit, okay? And then, of course, she was able to make some suggestions that could be done in terms of him sitting down and talking with her and this and that and let her know it. She was making some pretty good suggestions, but he wasn't really. He was just saying, hey, this is what might be, and I'm the man, and I'm the man, and as being the man, my name should be first on that check as such, and her name needs to come after my deal. Secondly, I'm the man, and I don't need to tell her, when I pull money out of the bank. And I'm the man in the sense that when I make my money, in terms of my deal I make, I don't need to give her anything unless I want to, because I am the man. Okay? So something, a lot going on there. I said, well, Lord. So I said, Lord, I'm going to need some help. I said, Lord, I'm going to need some help here. And he was just as serious as he could be. As serious as he could be. And you'll find out that there are some situations where a couple come in, or a family come in, that you might find that you might be getting a little bit impatient of what it might be. And so I said, well, Lord, I said that since you are deciding not to really kind of work some things out here, and you're saying you're the man, I said, well, we're going to have to just kind of see where it's what here. And but she said, I said, that was, there was a certain, and I just basically gave them an assignment to do, really. I forget what it was. I know it had something to do with her sitting at the table and her going through the bills with him. Are you willing to do this with her? her going through the bills or mortgage payments and this and that and what it might be and so forth and so on. And on top of that, each one of them had a kid, you know. No, she was the one that had 2 kids. He didn't have. So, and just, are you willing to do that, you know, and then see what is what? And he said, well, yeah, I'll take a look at that, you know. But it just so happened that they were, and this is how God works. I just love how God works sometimes to really get us out of trouble, bail us out many times. And so it just so happened that they were going on a cruise. And of course, you know, going on a cruise, she was spending her money going on a cruise as such. And therefore I said, well, Lord, while they go on this cruise, I pray that some way, somehow, you work this, you can work with this guy in terms of things work out. You know. And after 2 weeks, I got a call from her, from a meeting, and she told me, she said, well, we don't need any counseling anymore. I said, well, what had happened? I was kind of alarmed. I said, well, she said, well, I have decided that I'm not going to marry him at all. And I said, oh, well, I tell you what. I said, if by chance you need to further talk with me about the situation, the door is always open. If by chance he needs to come and talk to me about, you know, the situation, the door is already open. That's the only thing I said. I did not jump for joy. I did not say, praise you, Father, for your mercy and loving kindness. I just went ahead and said, great, and left it open. Left it open. And that's what you want to do. That's what you want to do as such, you know. And so my deal is that sometimes this situation here, there was much more stuff going on. If they had continued in the treatment deal, you know that we would have had to move to another level. You know we have to leave the problem-solving level and go to another level. As such, to see what was going on here. Okay, now, so some of the questions that were asked, I mentioned earlier, they're very important questions. And it might be that in some cases, if the couple is open to it, you might want to give them some training in the problem-solving skills. Now, we're going to stop here, and then we'll take up on this. We're going to go through this very slowly so that you can really get a sense of what we're talking about at each level.